today. I'm here to reintroduce this morning Elaine Gregoire, who's going to give us another presentation. We'd like to thank Elaine for all the hard work she's put into delivering some information for us and to all our speakers. And I'm going to share with you something about Elaine, seeing as I've challenged all the other people who are doing introductions to do the same. Elaine is part of a community choir. It's called the Common Thread Community Chorus. And their theme is one song at a time, we can change the world. And what they mean by that is that they explore the music of different cultures, and they present in their presentations a range of songs from different cultures around the world. So very shortly, after she gets home, they have a big concert, and they're presenting French, English and First Nations songs in that one. And last year, I believe they focused on Spanish and Portuguese. So Elaine has asked me to say, please don't ask her to sing in front of you. But that's really lovely. So I'd like to welcome back to the stage Elaine Gregoire. Thank you.
Good morning. It's great to see so many of you back this morning. Thank you for showing up again on a Saturday morning so early. Thank you also to Jacqueline for organizing my trip and making it so pleasant and make everything run so smoothly for me. And I want to also acknowledge country and acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and pay my respect to the Ngunnawal people. So those of you who were here yesterday know that I presented sort of a higher level presentation of what Ontario does to support parent engagement from a policy perspective. And today I was asked to present examples and give an idea of what it looks like on the ground. Now, of course, I can't give a comprehensive view of that because it's very localized. There's people doing good work all over the province, but I just picked a few examples that I thought you might be interested in. So I picked 3 examples from the three different levels of the education system. So the first one is the Parenting and Family Literacy Centers program, and that's for children and their parents or caregivers. The children are 0 to 6 years old. And then the Parenting Circles was a project that took place for parents of children under 13 years old, and Pathways to Education is a program in secondary schools. And then, so those 3 programs I've picked because I think they all have potential to reduce inequities in educational outcome, and I know that's something that you're interested in here in Australia, so hopefully you'll find that useful. And then I'm going to tell you a little bit about examples of committees of parents' involvement in decision-making or advisory roles in schools. And then I'll end with some lessons that I draw from those examples. So the Parenting and Family Literacy Centers are school-based programs, as I said, for children of 0 to 6 years old with their parents or caregiver. And they participate together in a range of play-based activities that are focused on the optimal development of the child. There's 2 key purposes to the PFLCs. The first is to support children's early learning and development and lay the foundation for successful transition into kindergarten, into the school system, and then to also help engage the parents and the caregivers positively with the school system. They're located in high-need neighborhoods. So the neighborhoods are selected based on socioeconomic status and parental education in the neighborhood. But they're open to anyone who wants to access them. So they're not limited. You don't have to be poor to go. Anybody can go. And you don't need to register. And you can go on a drop-in basis. But people tend to go regularly. So they're really easy to access. They were founded by a woman named Mary Gordon in 1981 in the Toronto District School Board. And initially, they were just in 5 inner-city schools of the Toronto District School Board. And since then, just in 2007, the government started funding them and expanding them every year since. So now they're in several school boards. And as part of the poverty reduction strategy that came out in 2008, the government committed to to expanding the number of PFLCs up to 300. They're hoping to put 300 in place across the province. And again, when the parent engagement policy came out in 2010, the government reiterated the commitment to expand that number. But so far, they're up to 155. So for a total investment of $10.6 million a year. And I mentioned yesterday that we have 72 different school boards in Ontario. So the schools are administered through those school boards, and there's 60 of those that are in English language and 12 that are French. So this is the distribution of the centers. So as you can see, there are more in the English language boards, and the Toronto district has a big proportion of them as well. And as I said, it's based on social demographic, census data, and level of parental education. So these are the goals of the program. First, to provide a program that promotes positive parent-child interaction and that supports the health and well-being of the whole child. Then offer a family literacy program that develops early literacy and numeracy skills, which are seen as foundational for success later in school. Then increase parent knowledge, involvement, and comfort level with the schools, and help the children transition more easily into kindergarten by having the parent worker at the PFLC, the parents and the kindergarten teachers working together. So there's a lot of learning that happens in the PFLCs, but a lot of it is through play. For the children, it's through play. For the adults, it's also through role modeling and partnering and peer learning as well. The parents learn a lot from each other. So it's not at all top-down. There's no sort of lecturing about how you should parent your child at all. These are additional goals: promote discussions and share parenting information that help to build the parent or caregiver's confidence and competence, provide support to parent and caregivers of children with special needs, and then collaborate with the community to link the families with appropriate community resources. And that part is important because there's a lot of newcomers in a lot of those neighborhoods. So for many of them, it's the first point of entry into the school system, and it's a place where they create connections. So both with the school, with the services around the school, and with each other. And they often end up, it's beautiful to see how they end up sort of relying on each other and helping each other out, really supporting each other. So there's a lot of social capital that's built through those centers. The centers operate 20 hours a week during the school day, so they're not open during school holidays. And they're really not a drop-in center or a child care center where you can drop off your child. The parent or the caregiver, it can be a grandparent or any caring adult that takes care of the child, has to be there with the child. The ministry provides funding for a manager at the school board level, and then a parent worker who has to have an early childhood education diploma. And then there's also administrative support and professional development provided and supplies. And then the staff are trained and hired, supervised by the school board. And the managers, which are based at the board level, have a network. So all the managers are part of this network. They can be part of an e-learning community. They have professional development activities together. This is what a typical day looks like in the PFLC. I can give you a couple seconds to read it. It varies from PFLC to PFLC, but there's key elements. It's really the choice. They have flexibility to adapt to the needs of the local community, but there are things like the learning materials are always materials that are cheap and easy to reproduce at home, and then they always have the family story and music time, and this is what it looks like. So it's a really joyful time. And then the ministry, as I said, provides the support as well as monitoring and resources. There's a parent handbook that I've brought with me. If anybody wants to take a look at it, I'll put it on the table again afterwards. And the ministry also provides signage, big signage at the school, and communication materials, and professional development opportunities. As you know, the literacy of children is closely linked to the literacy the opportunities that families are able to give them at home. And so I think the PFLCs really help because they're addressing the literacy of the family as a whole. So they really support the children's literacy and success readiness for school. We don't have a lot of research at the provincial level yet, but in the Toronto District School Board, which is the board that started it, they've done a study in 53 different schools. And they found that the PFLCs have shown long-term impacts. So, for example, the first one is about the early development instrument. I think you have a similar instrument in Australia that measures development of children in 5 different, in this case it's 5 different areas, so cognitive development, motor, socio-emotional. So they found that the odds of children who attend PFLCs with their parent and caregivers receiving low EDI scores in the 5 developmental areas are significantly smaller than their school peers who did not attend the program. Then young children who attended PFLCs were much more prepared for kindergarten, for schooling, than their peers who in the same school that did not attend. And after 3 years of schooling, so after junior kindergarten, senior, and grade 1, the students who attended, especially those who attended regularly, are likely to perform above the expected reading and writing levels in their midterm grade 1 report card. There's also, as a group, the students who attended PFLCs did better than their schoolmates on social skills, absenteeism rates, and learning skills. And the children, they also did better than children in other schools on those learning and social skills. And then the parents also reported that the parent workers gave them information that was really useful about, for example, parenting skills, school-related issues, community resources, and health. And as I mentioned earlier, there's all the connections that are formed and more confidence in parents develops. And we also have anecdotal information that the parents then tend to be comfortable in the school setting and tend to be more involved at the school. So either in school councils or volunteering at the school and in communicating with teachers, they feel more comfortable with that. So it's a program that we're proud of, and we hope that it's going to keep expanding. So that was the one for early learning. I also want to give you other examples at the primary level. So I told you yesterday about the Parents Reaching Out grants. For those of you who aren't here, this is a program that's funded through the Ministry of Education to support parent engagement and try to remove barriers to parent engagement. So there's 2 types of Parents Reaching Out grants. One is for school councils, and that's $1,000 that school councils can apply for a small project to remove barriers. And then there are regional or provincial projects, grants that either regional or provincial organizations can apply for. So they can be it could be a not-for-profit organization, it could be a parent involvement committee at the board level that applies, or sometimes even a university. So there's been over 200 projects, regional, provincial projects funded. There's been over 5,000 school councils project funded, but these are just 5 examples of the regional ones. The first 2 are in communities that have a higher dropout rate in Toronto, so the Spanish-speaking community and the Portuguese-speaking community. So the Spanish-speaking parents have organized a congress on an annual basis with parents to discuss issues related to parent engagement and to education, or they've had bullying as a theme one year. And then the Portuguese Canadian National Congress, they've used popular education community-based a project to engage also parents around cultural and perhaps barriers and try to remove those so that their children would be more likely to achieve in school. And then the Anishinaabe Friendship Center is an Aboriginal organization, and their project focused on transitions from grade 8 to grade 9, so into secondary schools, and on sort of opening up the lines of communication with parents to ease that transition. The Durham District School Board focused more on a project for newcomers. They created a welcome kit for the parents in multiple languages, and they've done all kinds of workshops and activities for them. And then the one I wanted to focus on a little bit more is the Parenting Circle. This was a project that was led by a researcher at Ryerson University in Toronto, in partnership with 2 community organizations, the Center for Spanish-Speaking Peoples and the Organization of Parents of Black Children. It was run as a community university partnership. And so the parenting circles themselves would be fairly cheap to run on their own, but they got a larger grant because there was a research component attached to the project. So the goal of the parenting circles was to introduce practical strategies to help parents effectively support and prepare their children for success in Canadian schools. And they had a curriculum that they used as a guide, which is about Canadian schools, and then foster the development of parent support networks. And these are some examples of the strategies that they used. The first one, it was interesting. They engaged the parents in authoring books about themselves and their aspirations for their children. So those are some of the titles, examples of the titles of the books that they wrote: "The Story of My Name," "A Special Person in My Life," and "Hopes and Dreams for My Child." So they wrote about the child also, and then shared those books. They also put family photos and try to be, as creative as possible with those books, and then they would share them with each other, but also with the children. And so it created a nice connection between the parent and the child, but also contributed to things like the maintenance of Spanish language and cultural, sort of pride in their cultural identity also. And then they also discussed challenges to participation in school, and through their discussion and sharing their aspirations with each other, I think they gained a better sense of how important their role is as an educator of their child. And then they also were given tasks to do that involved talking to teachers, going to school and getting information, just to get them comfortable going into the school and getting information and communicating with teachers. This is a quote from the researcher. She said, "In the Parenting Circles project, participating parents came to recognize that the act of expressing their thoughts, feelings, and knowledge in writing had far-reaching benefits that they could not anticipate for their children and went beyond the immediate reaction they may have had. As the parents witnessed the positive feedback from their children, they began to fully comprehend how this was a new tool for positive communication." So it had a really positive impact on their interaction with their children, and also made them more comfortable going into the school system. And several of the parents who participated said that they would like to start their own parenting circle. They really found a lot of value in it. And again, the connections that they made with each other were really significant. Then at the secondary level, I know that we often think that it's more difficult to engage parents, or that children don't want their parents to engage at that age, or they don't want to see them at the school too much. But we had some research done in Ontario that shows that the parent engagement is still really, really important at that stage. And we had in particular a study done on transitions, paying particular attention to transitions from grade 8 to grade 9, which is for us is the transition between primary and secondary. And they found that the ongoing caring adults and the engagement of families really acted as a protective factor to keep children or students engaged in school. And also the other protective factor was to have a community of helpers around the student to really help, especially for students in risk situations. So having not only the teachers and other caring adults at the school, but also the family, and other prep social services professionals and community members engaged. So the program I want to tell you about is called Pathways to Education. And it's a program that was started in 2001, I think, in Regent Park, which is the largest and one of Canada's first social housing projects. So it's a community that's traditionally been quite low income, although right now it's undergoing a revitalization and it's becoming mixed income. But traditionally, there's been a higher rate of criminality in the neighborhood and few services accessible right there. So lots of challenges, and there was also a very high dropout rates. Very, very few of the students went on to post-secondary education, and a small percentage used to graduate from high school. So there's a community organization, a community health center there that got really concerned about this and did consultations with the community. And when they talked to students, they said that the major barriers to high school completions were, first of all, transportation, because there was no high school in the neighborhood itself, so the students had to take public transportation. There was no transportation offered by the school board either, so they had to take the public bus, and for them that was a barrier because they didn't have money to pay for the bus tickets every day. And then they had low expectations. They didn't think that they could go to college or university, so they didn't think that it was worth finishing high school. And then even if they thought they could finish high school, there was a financial barrier to them going to university or college. And then when the community center talked to parents, they also found that they had additional barriers to their engagement. One of those was language, because many of them were immigrants and didn't speak English. And then even those who did speak English might have, they found that they had limited subject knowledge, so they had limited ability to support their children with their homework. And then those who did have the subject knowledge, because actually a lot of our immigrants are really highly educated, but they had learned what they knew through different instructional methods, and they could not really relate to the way that their children were learning. So the Regent Park Community Health Center decided to design a program that would address those barriers. And so this is the green parts are the 4 pillars of the program. So there's the academic supports. They provide tutoring. They have social supports, financial support. So they provide bus tickets and vouchers for lunch, as well as financial incentives to complete high school and go on to post-secondary school. And then the piece I want to tell you more about is the student parent support workers. Each student is assigned a support worker who acts as a bridge between the school and the family. And I think that's something that's been working really well, because they've been able to help the family understand the Canadian mainstream society, understand the school system, and then they help the student also develop relationship with the school, with their teachers, and strengthen the relationship to their parents as well, because often there's this cultural clashes between the parents and the students who want to adopt parts of the Canadian culture that the parents are not too pleased with. So the workers kind of act as a bridge, or a cultural broker, if you will, between the two. And they call parents on a regular basis, at least on a monthly basis, just to follow up. They follow up also on the students' attendance, their progress at school, and if there's any other issue, they'll talk to both to the students and the parents more regularly. And then these are I took this slide from their website, but some of the results that they found, they've had an external evaluation done. So some of the results are that the high school graduation rates has doubled, and then there's a 300% increase in attendance of university or college, which is pretty amazing. And then, so those were 3 examples that were focused mostly on parent engagement in children's and supporting children's learning. So as I said, I also wanted to give you some examples of parent engagement or in decision making or advisory roles. So Ken Leithwood, who's one of our researchers in Toronto, did a project recently and said, providing equitable opportunities to influence the school decisions making by those whose voices typically have not been heard will lead to significantly improved educational experiences for diverse and disadvantaged students. So I think involving parents in those decision-making bodies also has some potential for decreasing inequities in school, making them more inclusive. So some examples. Yesterday I mentioned the parent involvement committees. As I said, it's the parent involvement committees have been legislated. They were legislated in 2009. So every school board, district school board, has to put a parent involvement committee in place. And their role is mostly to increase support parent engagement in the school board. So they do that by providing information and advice to the board on parent engagement, and they also communicate and support the school councils that are the parent committees in the schools, and undertake activities to help parents support their children's learning at home and at school. And they act as a direct link between the director of education, and the board of trustees. So the director of education is the director of the school board, and the trustees are elected representatives. So on the PIC, all of those people are represented, but only the parents and the community members can vote. The directors and the trustees don't have a vote. And the committee has to be chaired by a parent or co-chaired by parents. Then the ministry supports the PICs in different ways. One way is they have an annual symposium, and I had the opportunity to go to the one at the end of April. So it was the third one, and it was really wonderful to see the energy in the room and the people sort of sharing best practices. I mean, it was also an opportunity for them to hear about initiatives that the ministry is putting out or new policies. But most importantly, I think they really enjoyed being able to exchange ideas and effective practices from their school boards. And then there's a PIC handbook, a handbook for PIC members that's been drafted. The draft is available currently on the ministry website, but it's been circulated and they've consulted parents on it and they're making some revisions, so the new version should be out soon. And then, as I said yesterday, they receive base funding for their activities. So that's they receive $5,000. Each PIC receives $5,000 plus 17 cents per student, which is just the formula. And in addition to that, they're eligible to apply for a parent reaching out grant if they want to do something additional. Then another committee I wanted to tell you about is related to the Safe School Strategy, which is a strategy that tries to improve the climate in schools, create a positive and safe climate. One of the aspects of that strategy is that the schools are required to try to avoid suspensions and expulsions as much as possible and create alternatives to that. So in finding alternatives to that, they have to meet with parents and involve community agencies as appropriate. So often referrals will be required to support those students where there are either mental health issues or social emotional issues. And then each school has to put in place a safe school action team that has to involve parents and community members. And then each school is also required to do a school climate survey every second year. And I brought a copy of it that you can take a look at, and that's also published in different languages. I have a few other languages on the table out there. So the results have to be shared with that Safe School Action Team, and then they deliberate together about what improvements they can bring about in their school. And then the Urban and Priority High Schools program is a program that was developed as part of the Safe School Strategy, and it's focused on high schools that have a high that are in areas with low socioeconomic status and high criminality, high immigration usually as well. So they're really only in really urban centers where there's at least 200,000 people and there's at least 500 students in the school. So only 34 of them across the province, and then I think 6 different school boards. And so in addition to this 3 ministry priorities, which yesterday I mentioned, are raising the achievement levels, reducing the achievement gap, and raising public confidence in education. The additional goals are to improve student engagement, promote a safe and positive school climate, and improve community engagement. And the way they can do that is very flexible. They're given quite a bit of money. In this initiative, it varies between $200,000 and $500,000 per school, in addition to all the regular funding that they get. But they can use that for a number of different initiatives, including things like after-school recreational programs, nutrition programs. They can use it for social workers or child youth workers, or release time for teachers. So that they can get professional development. And then they create a school community. They have to have a school community steering committee. So that's basically the key requirement. The rest they can pick, they can do what they want, but the committee is essential. And so it has to include community members, parents, students. And so often there's community agencies represented, mental health agencies, the police is often on the committees, and it can be chaired by the principal. Often it's the principal who chairs it, and sometimes co-chairs it with community members in ideal cases. And, oh, thank you. And so those are all the examples I wanted to provide. We're still learning about how to build a culture that values parents. I don't think we're quite there yet in terms of having a truly systematic and integrated approach, but I think we've come a long way in the last few years. And I just wanted to share, in ending, a few lessons that I draw from these different examples. One is moving beyond the deficit thinking. It's something I mentioned yesterday, and I heard it mentioned in several presentations. So really seeing parents as resources and seeing that they have important knowledge to contribute that's different from the professional knowledge of the teacher, but that's really in bringing together the knowledge of the teacher and that intimate knowledge of their children that the parents have together, that we can best support the children. Then providing them with specific information and feedback and really clear invitations to participate and be engaged. Peer-to-peer communication works quite well too. Like we've seen it in the parenting family literacy centers and the parenting circles, where the teachers or the parents learn a lot from each other. Thanks for the water. I need it. And the networking opportunities are really important as well. Then communication in the parents' first language as much as possible, or creating multilingual resources, or having translation at meetings as much as possible, interpretation. Having outreach materials also in which the parents see themselves reflected, and meeting them where they live or where they spend time and feel comfortable. So they might not feel comfortable in the school, so it's good to go out, maybe have home visit them in their places of worship, and the mall, and the community organization, wherever they hang out and they feel comfortable. And using community organization to outreach through them is useful as well. Then helping them navigate the education system, so that as is done both in the PFLCs, the parenting circles, and the Pathways to Education program. Addressing their social, economic, and physical barriers, so that could be through all sorts of things, but including having things like food and meeting, helping with transportation, just making it as easy as possible for them to come to the school, and also have access to the information they need to better support their children at home. Connecting them to the services that they need, and then I think also very importantly, strengthening the understanding of the teachers and their cultural awareness, and their ability to interact with parents in a respectful and way where they're going to be, the parents are going to trust them and feel comfortable with them. So this is it. I just wanted to acknowledge also the Learning Environment Branch, which is the branch that runs many of those programs, the Safe School Strategy, the Urban Priority High Schools, and the Parenting and Family Literacy Centers. So they've been generous and shared their photos with me and some of their materials. So, and thank you again for your attention. I don't know if there's time for questions or not. I think we have 5 minutes before the next talk. Yes.
Hello, Mary Tobin, Catholic Education Officer in Melbourne. Thanks again for your inspiration. Just wondering, in terms of the bigger picture around Ontario in relation to criminality, particularly youth criminality, have there been any broader trends tracked alongside the work that's happening across here in terms of impact?
Recently, I'm not sure how it's been tracked. I know that there was a big report done it must have been in 2008, more or less, called The Roots of Youth Violence. And the report was commissioned by the government it was a commission, after there was some crimes that happened in school, the shooting of there was a series of things, but there's a shooting of a young man in particular that triggered, a lot of public attention on criminality and safety around schools. So there's a big report done, and then some commitments were made as part of that report. The Urban and Priority High Schools project was not mentioned in the report, but it came shortly after that, so I think it was probably linked to that. And I'm not sure that there's been tracking since then, or there may have been, but I'm not aware of the numbers.
It just seems, in terms of budget allocation, that the impact of this would reduce budget at the other end.
That'd be interesting to know. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hello, I'm Wendy Goff from Monash University.
Hi.
I was really interested in the notion of student support workers, and I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about, is there any training or are there any qualifications that these support workers come to the school with? Because I see this as a real possibility for bridging learning across the sites in which children live and learn. I was just wondering if you could just talk a little bit more about that.
I think I'm not sure exactly what the requirements are. Like in terms of, I haven't seen the position description, but I don't think there's a requirement in terms of being a social worker or a particular type of worker, but having probably experience across different cultures and experience with young people would be like child and youth worker would probably be great at doing this type of job. But I could, if you're interested though, I could try to find the position description, see what the requirements are for it. We have a similar position. Well, it's not quite the same, but the other outreach workers, this one is really not widespread, right? It's just in this Pathways to Education. And I see this as something that has a lot of potential, and I wish every school had that. But currently there's no funding commitment for that. But there's a few other similar positions. We have a settlement workers in school program that's funded through the federal government that focuses more on settlement needs of families and students. And we have community outreach workers that are funded through a program called Community Use of Schools, which I mentioned briefly yesterday. It's a program that tries to facilitate the use of of schools facilities by community groups. So that position does a lot of outreaching to community organizations so that they'll come into the school and use the space as much as possible.
Thank you. I see that as a huge potential to be explored. Yeah, thank you for that.
You're welcome.